Hi everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. We are back in the propagating tunnel because there's been loads of germination in the last week. Now that's partly due to the increase in day length, but it's also partly because we've been having some nice warm sunny days. It has been cold on an evening here, but if I look at my thermometer here, yesterday in the tunnel the temperature got up to 27 degrees Celsius. And last night we got down to a low of freezing, 0 exactly. And currently it is 9 o'clock in the morning and we're already at 14 degrees in the tunnel. So the temperatures have increased significantly during the daytime. And that is why we are getting all of this growth. Show you what I mean. This is some Ammi Varieties. Able to see there that every single cell in that tray now has got germination in it. Now I'm stood in front of the Achillea and Ammi and Daucus because they, along with a couple of other plants, are what I'm going to be talking to you about in this video. And that is a group of flowers called UMB Fillers. Now, not only is Umbellifer a word that I absolutely love, but it's a flower that's really, really good to grow. And sometimes people can overlook it in favour of more common varieties of cut flower that they'll see a lot more of, or the big starry flowers that tend to take over the show in late summer, things like zinnias and dahlias and things like that. But I am here to make a plea for the UMB Fillers and say if you're growing a cut flower patch this year, please don't forget about the UMB Fillers because they're so important to be able to create a nice, balanced, large bouquet of flowers for your home. And now I'm going to share with you my top 5 favourite UMB Fillers, and they're all my favourites for slightly different reasons. And I'm going to run through how I sow them, how I grow them, and how gorgeous I think each individual one is. And then hopefully you'll be inspired to grow all 5 or at least one of these UMB Fillers in your cutting patch this year. The first flower that we're going to talk about is Achillea because it'll be the first one to flower for you if you decide to grow them. So Achillea is a hardy annual and there's 2 different periods of the year when you can sow Achillea. So this is Achillea which was sown in the autumn. So that was sown at the back end of September and overwintered, and that is now ready to go in the ground. And here we also sow Achillea in March, and this is what our March sowing currently looks like. So you can see there we've got germination coming through. What you'll also see is that Achillea is slightly sporadic in the way that it germinates. So if you're struggling with Achillea, even if you can only get a couple of seeds from that seed packet to germinate this year, and then grow them into plants, it produces so much seed for you and you'll have fresh seed going forward every year. And it is worth the effort of gathering that seed because the germination rate will be a lot higher for you. And when we plant our Achillea here, we plant it outside from our plug plant size, which is that, and they're very happy to go straight in the ground at that size. And then we would expect, if we're planting them now, which is when our soil starts to tend to warm up a little bit outside, we would expect to see flowers on our Achillea outside, grown exposed, in about the end of May, beginning of June, depending on what spring's like. So Ammi is the next variety that I'm going to talk about. So you can get lots of different Ammis, but there's 2 distinct differences between the varieties. You've got Ammi Majus, and that will germinate with a broader leaf, and it has a more open flower and tends to be a bit taller in this field, but I don't know if that's just this field. And then you've got Ammi Varieties, which germinates with a more feathery style leaf. I don't think that's the official term. And when it grows, it has really, really strong stems, a lot stronger than Ammi Majus actually. So if you need something to stand up to the wind and you want something a bit more robust, I would say that Ammi Varieties in that scenario is a better one to grow than Ammi Majus. But if you want light, delicate, airy flowers, then you want Ammi Majus over Ammi Varieties. And with Ammi, you have the same sowing windows you do with the Achillea, and we sow at the back end of September into October, and then we sow again at the end of February. And I'm just about to sow some more Ammi Majus for a third succession today, and then we will sow again at the very beginning of April, and then we will stop, because for us here we find that you get less and less flower stems and the plants aren't as chunky and as strong the later you sow them into the spring. And then we move on to Daucus. Now, Daucus seedlings are probably a little bit more difficult to see because they're a bit darker against the compost. Here we grow Daucus Dara, which is a cultivar of wild carrot, and it has a beautiful burgundy and white flower to it, sometimes with hints of pink as well, which combines really nicely with other white flowers, pink flowers, and particularly I like combining it with peach, but I think that's just because I like peach flowers. So Daucus is another hardy annual. Because it's from the carrot family, it likes a good long root system. That's one thing I would say about Daucus. It can really suffer from windrock here in this field, which is where the wind rocks your plants. And it doesn't like that because it's from the carrot family and it has a taproot. It disturbs the taproot, and then they can just die off. Sometimes it can suffer with carrot root fly because it's from the carrot family. To protect Daucus, if you are going to grow it and you're in an area which suffers from carrot root fly, I would say to put some wood around the outside, because carrot root flies only fly a few inches off the ground. If you can just build up some edges around your plants, it'll go some way to protect them. Or if you can use some enviro mesh while your plants are very young over the top, you'll see that farmers use it on their carrot fields as well. That'll go some way to protecting them, hopefully, from carrot root fly. So Daucus is another hardy annual, and we saw that in September, October again, and then we saw it in March and April. And then again, we stop in April with it being a hardy annual. One thing to note with Daucus is that it does like a little bit more heat when it comes to germination than Ammi and Achillea. So if you're struggling to germinate your Daucus, then I would say maybe try it on a heat mat if you've got one, or a really sunny window ledge. Just make sure if it's on a very, very sunny window ledge that as soon as it germinates, you move it to somewhere where it gets light right around, which is best practice with all seeds. Now we move on to Achillea, which is a perennial variety. It's cultivated from wild yarrow, which you can see quite often in the summertime growing along the verges in the UK. The wild yarrow tends to always flower white, but the cultivated varieties you get in a colour spectrum ranging really from soft pastels into peaches, oranges, pinks, reds, burgundies, and bright yellows. We saw our Achillea in September and overwinter those plants, and then we saw again in spring. The difference being that if you sow in the autumn and overwinter, which is what this plant is here, so that is one of our plug plants that we put into a 9cm pot and overwintered, the likelihood is I'll get some flowers off this plant this year. But the Achillea seed that I'm sowing in spring, I'd be quite doubtful that you would get flowers off it this year. You may, but don't set your hopes up too high. It will, however, definitely flower next year. And because it's a perennial, meaning it will go on flowering every year thereafter. It'll form larger and larger clumps over the years, and I would recommend that you dig your clumps up every sort of 3 years and then expose the root system and take root cuttings from the Achillea. That's how to cultivate more plants from it and freshen the plant up and reinvigorate it. I would say as a place to start with Achillea, Summer Pastels is a really lovely variety because you get a really nice mix of colours. And finally we move on to this, which is dill seed, and this is what I'm going to be sowing today. I saw this in the middle of March because it's the most tender of the UMB Fillers that I've been talking to you about, and it's a half hardy variety. The reason that I like to sow dill is because even just playing with this seed in my hand here gives you an indication of the smell of the plant. It smells so lovely and fresh in a vase. It has dark green stems and then produces really zappy yellow flowers on the top. Flowers tend to be held a little bit similar to Ammi Varieties, and bees and all the pollinators will absolutely love you for growing dill. Dill's a really forgiving seed and it will direct sow into lots of soils. I'll start our first sowing here now today in modules, and then I will direct sow at the back end of April, and it tends to take quite well in this field. I would say if you have a sandier or loamier soil, dill will grow a lot easier for you than it will for me in this field, but I still grow it because I love the smell. So now when it comes to planting, these are some of my overwintered Ammi Varieties. You can see they're desperate to get into the ground there. And what we need to be aware of is not the size that the plant is now, but the size the plant will get to during the season. So I know the spread of these Ammi Varieties is around 30 centimetres. So that means we need 15 centimetres clearance either side of the plant. So that means a total of 30 centimetres if we're planting 3 of the same plants around each other, which we have got there. So that means we've given enough clearance for all the plants to grow happily into each other and cover the ground, suppress the weeds, but also allowing air to circulate around the plants so that they can grow quite happily. So there we go. I hope I've inspired you to remember to sow yourself some UMB Fillers this year to go with all the big starry flowers, because they really do bring something extra to your bouquets and vases. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite UMB Fillers are, and if there's one that you think beats my top 5, I'd love to know about it and your reasons why you like to grow them. And if you've enjoyed the video, then I'd love it if you like and subscribe. See you next week. Thanks. Bye.